Hello and welcome to the Echo Chamber podcast. My name is Tony Groves and I will be one half of what we promise will be a fun and sometimes informative 30 minutes. Echo Chamber podcast is a free-flowing adult conversation that may occasionally touch on mature subjects. This is my co-host,
Martin McMahon. Tony here writes at Trickster's World and he's also on Broadsheet. Tony is our banker with a conscience. Well, at least he thinks he has a conscience.
Martin is our resident crank and our conspiracy theorist. He's here to bring actual a little bit of life to my grey bones.
Yes, exactly.
Martin blogs at Ramshorn Republic and tweets at William H. Bonney. Again, lads, thanks very much for tuning in. Those of you who did last week, apologies for the
editing mess.
Yeah, well, that was all my fault.
Yeah.
Bear with us. We will get this better slowly but surely.
We're going to jump straight in with Budget 18, Tony. Give us your opinions there.
Well, the budget 18 is exactly like every year we say there's never been a budget that's been more comprehensively leaked, and every year it's the exact same.
I believe every single section of this was leaked in advance.
Yeah, it was all leaked. It was the let them eat cupcakes Leo budget, or as I like to call it as well, the Fiver Friday.
This is the squeezed middle, Tony. This is where we're at. Squeeze middle need more, but there was a letter in the Irish Times from at Brian Flanagan 1, and he explained very comprehensively that the squeeze middle is in and around 27,000 a year.
Yeah, well, in fairness, Martin, like 27,000. This is the fallacy, I suppose, of this budget. You know, Fine Gael base is people on the kind of 70,000 plus category, and you know the figures.
Look, if you're not earning 75 grand a year plus, why are you voting for Fine Gael? You're an idiot. You're just an idiot. If you're earning 75 grand to 750 million a year, Fine Gael is the party for you.
Yeah, well, again, I'd like to think it's a bit more nuanced than just economic levels of activity. But at the same time, what we're faced with is a budget that's actually rewarded what we call the ABC ones, the professional classes, as opposed to the squeezed middle. You know, they're benefiting to the tune of 3-1, I think, and it's a funny problem that we have, particularly how it's been reported as the budget for the squeezed middle. In the States, Trump's trying what's called tax reform, and it's being called tax breaks for the rich. Here, we're getting away with peddling what are tax breaks for the rich as a tax break for.
Well, it is the greatest con they ever pulled, was to convince people on 40,000 that their interests are the same interests as a person on 40 million. It's an awful con, and the IMF came out just this week and said that taxing the rich doesn't affect growth. The right thing to do here is to have a third bracket. What do you think?
Well, the third bracket is something I think Sinn Féin proposed it at 6% above 106,000 or somewhere in that region. I could be wrong on that, but it was actually costed, and it showed that it would benefit the exchequer and it would actually be more certain. That was thrown back as populist on the basis that it would this is the old chestnut that really annoys me, that it would deter us attracting top talent. Well, you know,
this argument is always put out, or the rich will flee, you know, FLEE. Well, in honesty, the way budgets go in this country, the rich flee, FLEA. And that's the truth of it. The rich have gotten so much richer through austerity.
Yeah, well, Martin, you have to incentivise entrepreneurship. You have to incentivise people.
Okay. Entrepreneurship. We all know that the figures in this country don't make sense. There are some very good entrepreneurs out there who are bringing stuff up from scratch. It's such a poor tax cut that it's pointless to spend it unless you're going to fix something. Now, Agent Ahaclia on Twitter brought that point up.
Yeah, well, I mean, what we're looking at is, you know, realistically, a small if you try to please everybody, you end up pleasing nobody. It's the old chestnut of, everybody's special, so nobody's special. So I think there was a lot of marketing and PR went into this budget to make sure that everybody felt that they get the fiver. We're all supposed to swallow the fact that some people are going to be waiting on their fiver until the end of the first quarter next year, whereas TDs, ministers, and our Taoiseach are getting big pay rises at the end of this year.
Well, I worked this out. That €5 social welfare increase, and it doesn't amount to €5 once everything's taken out of it. And a €5, Leo Varadkar gets paid 146. Sorry, yeah, 146 for every minute he works. So that fiver is somewhere around 3.5 minutes work for Leo Varadkar.
Nice work if you can get it.
I just think when both are getting money from the state, and both are getting money from the state, both the person who is jobless seeking a job and Leo Varadkar, who is there meant to be representing everybody within the state, that differential sums up what's going on in Ireland at the present moment in time.
Yeah, but I also don't notice enough kickback from the TDs and everybody else on the opposition benches either.
Well, this leads me straight into where the budget fails hugely. Homelessness.
Yeah. They missed. Sorry, Martin, but they really missed the trick here. This Leo, I thought last week I said that Leo would take this opportunity to put his stamp on things and make some sort of sign that he cares about the greater good. I think the government have missed a major opportunity here to make this the homelessness budget.
Well, I would have said the same about the last budget when they had more money, but. This is summed up for me by at Kevin McMorrow on Twitter, and he said that Owen Murphy announced 62 different housing proposals since taking office 2.5 months ago. 62 proposals in 2.5 months. They have no idea how to fix this. They have no will to fix it.
I actually disagree with you. I think they do have many ways of fixing it. I just think that as long as they don't get in the way of what they think is sacred, which is the private market and interfering with the industry.
No, it's even more basic than that with Fine Gael. It's the moral hazard. They think you're giving somebody something for nothing, even though people in social housing pay for that social housing, and it's an investment in your future.
Well, I'm looking at, like, even this morning, Leo Varadkar was at a Construction Industry Federation conference this morning, and he told them, let's work together and let's get building. Now, we're talking about someone who's talking with the lobbyists about how to get.
This is it, and this. The Construction Federation is the second biggest lobbyist in the country, second only to IBEC. So you have the financiers and the building, both being the biggest lobbyists in the country.
Well, I mean, nothing made it more stark than when Mel Reynolds this week told us that there was only 142 houses built last year.
By local authorities. That is an incredible figure, and an incredibly low figure.
It's not though, because everybody has kind of known that this was true, but because they can say that houses that were connected to the ESB grid were effectively new builds. They're still peddling that lie.
Kieran Cuff put up a tweet yesterday and he quoted Judge Binchy, and Judge Binchy said, "It was perplexing that in an era of unprecedented prosperity, homelessness should continue to present a problem. Excuse me."
Now, again, there are some good things in the budget. There's some good initiatives. I do think that they've missed an opportunity. I think
I'm way more cynical than you on this, Tony. Way more cynical. They love homeless people. Fine Gael love homeless people. Love them. They love them because it keeps the pressure on the rental sector. They love them because it keeps prices high. And their ABC ones want the prices high. And this is why they're doing it. It's very cynical. They are doing it for their voter base.
But what we're looking at realistically is an opportunity where they've taken NAMA, they're going to turn it into a developer fund where they're going to lend to developers to then buy homes back off developers as developers making a profit from. Now, I wrote weeks ago on why actually NAMA, when it was constructed, had the ability to become a housing agency, and we've waited too long to do it. And now that we're going to do it, we're going to turn it into an actual bank for developers that's going to increase their profit margin to bring back the cranes.
Well, Nama Wine Lake, and anybody who's on Twitter knows Nama Wine Lake and has been on the button with Nama from day one. Nama Wine Lake said that the National University of Maynooth has estimated that not building social housing will cost 24 billion over 30 years. That's approximately a third of the Anglo debt that was heaped upon us.
Yeah, well, I mean, realistically, our national debt is over 200 billion. I haven't seen that study, so I can't really comment in depth. But I can say that the social cost, the cost of mental health services, the cost of the detrimental effects that we're going to do, and the damage that we do to the wider society, is not going to be addressed by simply having homeless hubs.
And this week, Owen Murphy has come out and he floats the idea of 3-star family hubs for professionals and
chillax zones.
Mainstream media nods along and it gives this credence, this absolutely insane idea, some credence. I mean, basically, Fine Gael's solutions to the housing crisis so far have been reopen bedsits, rebuild towers, and communes. Anything but build houses. Anything but.
Well, again, I'm not going to come back on that too harshly, but I will say that I'm deeply concerned that a country that is as wealthy as we are and that its economy is growing as rapidly as it didn't take the opportunity to address the homeless crisis. In fact, they've gone so far as to say it's not a crisis now. We have spokespeople talking about the fact that there's almost an acceptable level.
Well, Marcus on Twitter @MarcusPatrick had summed this up, and he said it's clear from the budget is that Fine Gael are ideologically against the idea of housing for housing's sake. It's about who can profit from it.
Again, I do think there's an ideological block, and that is something that, again, I'm not going to defend Fine Gael, but I am going to say the opposition have done an awful job in actually holding their feet to the fire on this, because realistically, if we can't get the Fine Gael to make changes to their right-wing views,
but they're not going to change. And I mean, this is it. You can fix.
They're a minority government, Martin. They should be their feet should be put to the fire on this. They're a minority government. They don't have the balance of power. Where is the actual kickback? They haven't even had a kick in the shin, let alone a kick in the balls.
But they're not a minority government. They're a coalition government. They're a faux coalition government with Fianna Fáil. And I mean, you can fix social housing, or you can have Fianna Fáil in government, but you can't have both. And that's the lesson we have learned. You can't have both.
We're going to move on to something a little more light and fluffy, but nonetheless was very controversial this week. The 9th of October was the 50th anniversary of Che Guevara's.
Vive la Revolution!
And Jim Fitzpatrick, good old @Jim Fitzpatrick on Twitter, is the artist who gave us the iconic image that now adorns the stamp that so infuriated those of the alt-right, far-right, fascist, neo-Nazi.
I bought 12 of the stamps. I splashed out and I bought 12, and I'm saving them for Christmas. And I'm getting Che Guevara postcards with the picture, and I'm going to send them to all my favourite alt-righters, those on the right. And it's those on the right that have been coming out. I mean, basically anybody who has hashtag MAGA, a picture of Donald Trump, pro-life, Renewa, any of those people. Oh God, of course, Hibernia Forum up in arms over this. But
Barton, please don't give these people oxygen, honestly, because that's all they want. They want oxygen. The simple response to this, and it's very easy. Good and great are seldom the same man. Okay. Che Guevara may not have been a good man. Although he certainly did abhorrent things. He did things in a time of war and time of revolution.
Yeah, but that's
he
not
also
unusual.
then acknowledged that he did things that he shouldn't have done, and he changed his views in the same as Castro did toward later on in life. I'm not going to be an apologist for them, but good and great are seldom the same man. He may not have been a good man, but he was certainly a great man.
Well, this is the hypocrisy of these people. They're jumping on it because he was an icon of the left, and that's basically it. There are loads of others just as bad. Collins, Nelson Mandela. I mean, the list is endless of people who were both terrorists, murderers, and also great leaders.
Yeah, I think it was I think it was Robert Fisk who said all terrorists go on to be statesmen, all super terrorists go on to become super statesmen.
That does really sum it up very well. We're going to move on, and this one of my favorite subjects is the Strategic Communications Unit. Now, it's not communications, it's propaganda, and it's black ops, or as we call it in this country, Verac ops. Hashtag Verac ops.
Verac ops, I love it, because these are the people, the string pullers, and the as Martin would call it, the fifth estate.
Okay. Oh yeah, these guys are the MI6. Black propaganda people. They're trying to put out all these messages, and it's not just the odd tweet on Twitter. I mean, that's what we see, the visible, but it's stories fed to the press. It's relationships with journalists.
Can I stop you for a second? There was Claire Daly was on Eamon Dunphy yesterday evening, and she spoke about the fact that she doesn't get close to the journalists in Leinster House, because she sees what happens is that the guys who do get close actually then become embedded in a way that they then become buddy and they pass information, and they get so the journalist then almost ceases to do investigative journalism, and it becomes a soft stop story, whether it's about socks or about someone doing a local cake sale, as opposed to what's actually going on and what are the critical matters. Becomes difficult for journalists then, because then they're brought into the loop of, boy, I don't want to bite the hand that feeds. And I think Claire identifies it brilliantly. I would say it's the podcast is called The Stand with Eamon Dunphy. It's well worth a listen. The other problem we obviously have with the Strategic Communications Unit, or Verac Ops, I think is a great name for it. Give you credit to Martin. The real problem we have is that Leo's gotten away with saying this thing was cost neutral.
Yes. Yeah. No, look, you and I both have kids, and when our kids say, I didn't do that, and then, an hour later you find out they did, and you say, you lied to me. But in this country, you can't say the Taoiseach lied. You have to say misspoke, miscommunicated. We can't just be straight about this. It was a lie.
If this was Enda Kenny, we'd be parodying it now. We'd actually we'd have Mario Rosenstock giving us a gift grub special of the man with 2 points.
But you see, it sat for 24 hours, and very few in mainstream media picked up on it, and it had been a point of discussion on Twitter for a full 24 hours before it actually made it into mainstream media in a big way.
I don't know about that. What I do know is that the problem also is that a lot of people in the public just expect politicians to lie to us, and we just kind of say, oh, well, I suppose lying about 5 million isn't too bad. But like, only today we're having an argument whether we can afford 6 million to put defibrillators into schools for children. So, what is it? Do we want to spend 6 million helping children, or do we want to spend 5 million on a vanity project for a Taoiseach?
And it's actually, it's meant to be government communications, but it's not government communications. It's a Fine Gael spin. I mean, they should be forced to pay for it themselves out of their own pockets.
Well, look, 5 million could get 133 children scoliosis surgery done. Those children are sitting in pain today. That's the reality. People only on last night on Pat Kenny talking about this. In the waiting list, 700,000 people sitting on waiting. 700,000. It's phenomenal. There is nobody's putting a figure on what this is costing your economy.
It's just phenomenal.
Well, we're looking at a situation whereby the Strategic Communications Unit, the Verac Ops Unit, we need to actually have a conversation with ourselves, because I wrote when Leo came to power, and this came up, that everything he said had to be parsed and we had to be very careful. It's actually at the stage now where it needs to be a subject of parody. It needs to be mocked. It needs to be called for what it is, because the simple reality is, it is propaganda.
Well, if we just say with Harris and the waiting list, the waiting list went up by 19,000 last month. 19,000. Now, if they're not taking double that number off the waiting lists, then they're just going to keep going up and up. And there is no plan for anybody to be carrying out 40,000 procedures a month. And this is what they need to be doing to bring that waiting list down at the same rate as it's going up.
Well, Martin, I'm going to hit pause here now for a minute, and we'll come back in with another roundup of some of the things that are going to come up that we think are going to boil up in the next week or two, and a little bit of Martin becoming a subject of the Trump. Not the never
yes.
Trumps,
the
yes. Only Trumps.
Welcome back, and we're going to kick off with boilers. Boilers are stories that we see on Twitter that haven't made it into the mainstream media yet, and we think that these are the ones that are going to make it in. I'm going to kick off with water, Tony. There is a conspiracy to privatise infrastructure.
Hang on now, come on, take me down the rabbit hole and tell me what's happening.
There are contracts that have been carried out by the Irish experts for years to fix aspects of the water services.
County councils, or is this site serving Actavo?
Well, it can be county councils, it can be operators that work for county councils, but these people have the knowledge. You know, these are people that are used to the system. And now they've been underbid by companies from the likes of Portugal, and I mean seriously underbid to the rates of almost 50%. And people offering those prices, you got to say, you know, can they give you the same service?
Hang on. Back up the truck here. So what you're saying is that, you know, and again, I'm going to take this on a wider European view. So they're saying that the pipeline, that the pipe that delivers the water to my house is going to be organised through a company in Portugal. This is madness. This happened in across Europe over the last 10, 20 years, whereby the utility was a state utility, but the bloody infrastructure was owned by a private company.
Explain that, Tony.
Okay, so take Irish Water, and we say Irish Water is a public utility, but the pipes that actually bring the water to your house, then someone tenders for the maintenance service and production of those, and you get a private company that does that. So in effect, they hold the reins of power. They deliver the service, and and they actually then.
So we own the water.
Yeah.
But what brings the water to your house, they own.
Yeah, and what happened, and what's still happening in cities across Germany, is they're taking back the grid, because they're saying, hang on, these guys came in, they undercut at 50% of what the other guy bid for, and then they just didn't deliver a service. They just they take the money, they repatriate it back to the mothership, they do minimalist improvements to the network, and we call it the free market.
Well, I mean, there is a plan to sell off water in or to sell off the infrastructure, to sell off the utility.
It's not going to happen. Any government that tries to do that is on a
well, we saw it finished Labour. It finished Labour, and Labour thinks they're going to come back from the dead, but the next election will see Labour worse off than they are now.
Just to bring this back on Labour, just to end for my piece on Labour, they still never actually really put their hands up and said.
Oh, look, after the last election, Labour's first words out of their mouth should have been sorry. Well, and if they started from that point, they would now have built up a base. But they didn't start from that point.
Don't get me started on
I'm going to move us on, Tony. Banking, you have some information from the central bank that came up.
Well, yesterday the central bank put out a report and a lovely little 3-minute video on the fact that we're now, you know, we've now more people at work than ever before, and we're now at that magic, nearing that magic full employment number. I think basically our numbers at work are ahead of the the government's targets and expectations, yet the income tax numbers are behind. And the central bank kind of plummets it by saying that they think that'll kind of ease over the next 18 months, that they think somehow magically people are going to get pay rises and everything will be back on target. I think they're ignoring the elephant in the room, and that's something that you obviously are quite passionate about, Mark.
Yeah, this is bogus self-employment, and Ep2 told government that bogus self-employment is costing them multiples of claimant fraud. I mean, very large multiples of claimant fraud. Government tinkers at the edges, but there is, and I will say this straight out, there is a conspiracy here. And there is a conspiracy here. I've highlighted it to Minister Doherty at the beginning of the summer, and we had a meeting. We discussed all of this. I pointed out the costs, and I'm looking at only the basic costs. The overall costs are way more. It's illegal state aid for companies. Now, construction is one of the biggest sectors at the moment where they're under the ERCT system. The ERCT system is basically how you misclassify somebody as self-employed. It's self-select for the employer. There's no input from the employee. You cannot get it overturned. I have tried with 10 builders to have that misclassification overturned. And Noonan said, oh, if you have a problem, go to the department. Yeah, we had a problem. We went to the department. We went through all levels of the department. And they overturned their own decision at the end.
Martin, I think we'll have to come back to this in a lot more detail, but I'll be just keeping an eye on this central bank report as well, because I want to see how they're looking at the types of how people are classified, the work they do, self-employed, bogus self-employed, PAYE worker, and what's actually happening out there, and what people call about the sharing economy.
My bottom line on this is no different to Apple tax. This is special arrangements with certain employers to give them an unfair advantage, and that's what's going on. I'll move us on to our last boiler, and our last boiler is off the back of a tweet from @Revolution IRL, and he said, prepare for a rise in homelessness as rents to rise on the 5th of December. You know what this is, Tony?
Yeah, this is the end of one of the first freezes on the rents that Minister Coveney at the time, one of our many housing ministers that seems to come and gone, put in place. I don't know is the short answer. I think what we're going to have is hopefully people who'll apply the 4%. No. You know what's going to happen here. Nephew, niece is going to college. We need the house. I need to sell the house. Whatever excuse they can use, get the tenants out, lash the rent up 50, 60, 70%. This is what's going to happen, and this is going to be an indicator of what's going to happen going forward. Where we'll see it is in this new HAP thing as well, because they've increased the HAP allowance. They've increased the HAP allowance in the budget, and if it's eaten up by the end of December, we'll all know that this was just price gouging by landlords. What I will say is we can't say that the 4% rent pressure zones this is gonna be an acid test for them. It could be it could be the tsunami that we all afraid is on the horizon, or it might actually be that the system works.
Well, we'll have to watch this boiler and see where it's going. We're going to move on now, Tony. We're going to #ManBoys, and this is a story, or this is a discussion about the type of people we're electing.
Well, I tell you one thing now. It's a global thing. It's not just here.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm going to start with Leo Varadkar. I'm going to say Trudeau. I'm going to say Macron.
Well, the three amigos. In fairness, Leo was wanted to be one of them. He is one of them, for better and for worse.
Yeah, well, Trump is in there too. Boris is in there as well. I mean, these are...
Okay, just on Boris, when you think of Boris now, how he basically carried the day on Brexit to get the leave. He carried the vote for leave is because he was upset with his Eton buddy, which is another Cameron.
But my big thing is these man boys now all lie to our faces and nothing happens. I mean, we've seen it with Fine Gael. We've seen it in the budget. They literally lie to our faces.
Yeah, and the lies. Okay, are not acceptable. But what's really worrying is the fact that they think they're statesmen.
Well, you had Leo Varadkar saying that they're not going to set targets for housing for fear of disappointing people. I mean, what is that? Is he in government? Is he an observer of government?
He did say 2 weeks ago, "I'm a keen observer of politics."
Yeah, well, that's observing politics. That's not participating.
Yeah, I have, and again, we can talk about all of these, but the traits of this are now getting to become serious, because we have people in government who purely want to be spokespersons for politics as opposed to actually being politicians. We have them, we have speechwriters who are coming up with the Republic of Opportunism.
There was something about Simon Harris there during the week, wasn't there?
Listen, Simon Harris actually sent an email to the HSC saying, "Can you get me a list of photo opportunities for and press conference and launches that are taking place that I can show up for?" Basically, I want to be there, to be seen, to be hip and
so
cool.
These are to a great degree, these man boys are narcissistic. It's all image driven, and they are hugely adverse to any type of criticism.
Well, thin-skinned. We're looking at an age where particularly with the males of this species tend to be more precious than
they are precious men, and that is the only way to describe them. Precious men. I mean, man up a little, lads.
It's the rise of, I think, it was the scrotox is the word.
Oh yeah. This was a story at Hazel Catherine Larkin during the week, and she spotted a story where men are using Scrotex, and Scrotex is...
Don't go there.
I have to go here. Scrotex is Botex for the scrotum. Now, I have to confess, when I heard it, I had to look at a before and after picture of what happens.
So the before looked like your face, and the after looked like mine.
Well, a bollocks is a bollocks. A bollocks is going to look ugly no matter what. You can tie bows on it, it's going to look ugly.
Just get a pack of giblets.
Well, what guy stands there and go, yes, my smooth ugly bollocks look better than my wrinkly ugly bollocks.
I have to say, don't knock it till you've tried it. We're going to go on now to wrapping things up, but before we do, we're going to just talk about the fact that Martin made his way across the pond.
Yeah, I don't just annoy Irish politicians. I annoy Donald Trump among others. And this week he was complaining. He had a tweet out, and he wanted to know what should they do about not getting the same amount of airtime as
he was up in arms at the fact that the mainstream or lamestream or the fake news media or whatever crap title he put on it. Basically, Donald was tweeting saying that there was no balance because they don't get the same level of positive press coverage as they do negative. It was almost like listening to David Quinn screaming, "Balance, balance!"
Well, my reply, and a lot of it too, is replies that do well or tweets that do well, and it's a lesson for Twitter, is timing. And it was just the timing. I said, "Take a knee." And it was picked up, and it's been in the American press, and it's been reported.
I saw it beside Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel. I mean, like,
yeah. I was up there.
You and Baghdad.
In lights,
Yeah.
But it was, timing is everything, and that, as a tweet, it just hit at the right time. It worked for that. But then I had 3 days of notifications full of crazy Trump people just going on, and that's the price you pay for it. These people, and it wouldn't be so bad if you could actually decipher their spelling.
How long was John McGurk on to you for?
And Paddy was there as well.
Paddy Manning.
Basically,
I love you, Paddy.
Basically the same crowd were giving out about the Che Guevara stuff. It's all the same
so
people.
They just went from one to the next. Well, on that note, we'll wrap things up. Remember, lads, this show is all about you, the listeners, the tweeters, and the other retrobates. So we'd be delighted if you love the show or you hate the show that you could like us in whatever way you're listening to the show. Give us a review. If you can give us a 5-star review, that'd be great. When we will get it on iTunes, we're working on that. We're currently on SoundCloud. You can send us feedback or have your music feature on the show by sending an email to theechochamberpod@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at @EchoChambersPod and tweet us using the hashtag EchoPods. I just want to say thanks very much for listening. We're hoping to get better at this. And Martin, have you got something to say?
Just thanks for following, thanks for listening, and talk to you next week, Tony.
Take a knee, boys and girls. Take a knee.